recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm your host, Nicole Finari.
And I'm also your host, Stacy Moore.
And this week we're going to overanalyze Gifted. Frank Adler, played by Chris Evans, is a single man raising a child prodigy. His spirited young niece, Mary, McKenna Grace, in a coastal town in Florida. Frank's plans for a normal school life for Mary are foiled when the 7-year-old's mathematical abilities come to the attention of Frank's formidable mother, Evelyn, played by Lindsay Duncan, whose plans for her granddaughter threaten to separate Frank and Mary. What'd you think of the movie, Stacy?
I thought it was thoroughly fine. It was, B-, decent, perfectly good. I didn't think about it much longer, though, after I saw it. It didn't really stay with me that much. What about you?
B- might be a little high for me. I just did not like this movie.
Oh, so you had strong feelings about it.
Well, it was just so dumb.
Yes. Tell me why.
So, okay. This movie had the bad luck of both being not very good and then striking several very close to home nerves, which was bad.
Ooh, bad combination for Nicole.
Yes. So on the dumb part, the whole plot, just all of the things about the plot, the court case, their compromise deal that was super fake.
Made no sense. Would that ever happen? Should we explain? Basically it's, Frank is, I guess this sort of no account loser for all the, he's kind of retired from life, I guess is a good way to put it. And he's basically trying to maintain custody of his niece, the daughter of his late sister, who took her own life. I guess when McKenna Grace, what was her name again? I don't even remember her name. Was it Mary? Mary was a baby, and his mother, Mary's grandmother, comes to challenge him for custody, right? And she's this, very, well, I was going to say waspy, but she's actually English, British, very stuffy, Northeast.
Yeah, academic, literally Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, and comes in and she wants to raise her in this much waspier style. And so the basic conflict of the movie is this court case, this court battle for custody of Mary, and the compromise they come up with is that nobody gets her. They put her in a foster home. No, which made no sense to me. I was like, what?
Yeah,
nobody. Wait, she has too many people trying to get her, and so they give her to nobody. And why would? And it was apparently the grandmother's idea, but they said the grandmother was so sure she would win, and that's why Frank agrees to take the deal. If she was so sure she would win, why would she propose a deal?
No, they say she's sure she's gonna lose, and his lawyer tells him that he thinks he's gonna lose.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, that at least clears that up. Right, but still, I agree. I was like, is there any legal precedent for that? Is that realistic at all? I mean, I don't know much about custody law.
I mean, the thing about family court, and I know a little bit, is that the person I saw it with was just absolutely squirming in his seat over all the ridiculous courtroom scenes. And some of them I said, this is family court. Family court is its own special thing. It doesn't actually have to follow all the exact rules of civil court or criminal court. And the judge has a lot of discretion. So the judge is only ruling what's in the best interest of the child. So the judge can actually do almost whatever the judge wants. There's there's no it's not this is the law and you have to follow the letter of the law. It's this is what the judge thinks is best for the child. So it is a little bit more free form in that sense. Okay. But it's just impossible to think that any judge would be well, 2 people really want her. Let's give her to a third other option like that. No,
absolutely not. I can only presume. Well, I have my theory for why they chose to do that for the movie, and I think it's to go with the themes of the movie. But we can touch back on that later when we're discussing the social aspects. But yeah. I guess. Let's point out that this is maybe our third movie in a row featuring Octavia Spencer.
It is.
And what are we going to do next week? How are we going to do the show without an Octavia Spencer movie? I'm just getting used to having her around, you know? How did you think she did? How do you rank this in her performances?
Yeah, we're done for. I don't know how. And she was great because she's always great. And I there's just nothing more to be said on that front.
Even in the singing into a comb scene?
She has a surprisingly good voice, actually. You didn't like her voice?
Oh, no, I don't even remember like how well she sang.
It was pretty good. Okay, so who do you want to do first? The kid or Chris Evans?
Let's start on a high note.
Oh, wait, can I just...
Go ahead.
Okay. First, before that, can I just say Jenny Slate... Great voice actress.
Absolutely.
Never want to see her again.
Really?
Like, never actually want to. Yeah, just, it's not that she's a bad actress. It's just she's such a good voice actress. And like all I could see that entire time was the little sheep from Zootopia whenever she was talking. Like she's really nailed her voice acting parts. And I'm just sort of like, let's put this aside, Jenny Slate. Let's stick to the voice acting because you're so good at it. And it
is her strong suit for sure.
I was just going to say, if you've seen Master of None, John Benjamin, who voices Archer and Bob from Bob's Burgers, is in it as a person.
Yes.
Like he's in it and it's so disconcerting. I just like can't handle hearing Archer's voice come out of this like real live dude. I hate it. He
does not look like Roger Moore.
It's just so weird. So, okay. So kick us off on the adult, the dad, or the kid.
Let's go with McKenna Grace. I thought she was okay. I thought she was amazing. Like she had me like tearing up in places. She actually looked, I was like, that child is distraught. Somebody help that child. She was really good. Like she nailed like all of the really emotional scenes, and then she was likable throughout. When she tells that one kid, the kid that's smiling at her across the classroom, and she tells him to get a hold of himself. Or she's like, pull yourself together. I thought she was great. What do you think?
I thought she was good, and I thought I thought she and Chris Evans had really good chemistry.
I agree.
I loved all their scenes together when she's like sitting on his lap, or she's like crawling up his body in that one scene at the sunset, which was my favorite scene of the movie.
Me too, yeah.
They just look so right together. To me, it was so believable that he had been raising her.
Yeah, it seemed like he had just been like, he'd been taking care of her for years. Absolutely.
However, it was pointed out to me that he has exactly 2 facial expressions. I wasn't that bothered.
What are the 2? Tell me.
I think if I didn't ask, but I think it would be like furrowed brow and then relaxed.
Yeah.
He doesn't emote a lot with his face. I'd
say it would be anxious and sincere are the 2.
Yes, I think that's basically what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Okay. So poor Chris Evans. He gets an A for effort. And you know what I mean? Through most of he's not a bad actor. I just think it's a problem of range for him. I think
really,
yeah. So I think like through most of the film, and most of his movies, he does a perfectly good job. It's when he has to express any kind of experienced pain that he kind of falls off the rails. Like when he tells Bonnie, the teacher, when he's telling her how he walked in and found his sister having taken her life, he says it with all the kind of like, just kind of blasé, like, you know, bitterness of like a guy talking about how he walked in on his wife with his best friend. Like, it's like, there I was, you know, there she was, dead on the bathroom floor and baby on the couch. So what are you going to do? And I was just like, I was taken aback by like how insensitive it seemed. That he was just like, well, you know, stuff happens.
So interesting.
Oh, you didn't perceive it that way?
I mean, I did now that you say it, but at the same time, and I don't know if this is a credit to the director or not, when people ask me about my sister's disappearance, it's very just the facts, ma'am. Like, you don't get emotional. You don't let yourself get emotional about what that was like. So to me, that actually seemed really realistic. Like, he stayed away from any emotional talk about his sister. And that is kind of how you learn to handle that situation. Like, you're not going to break down in tears in front of the person. So I actually didn't have a complaint about that. To me, I can't fault him for what was essentially an incredibly poorly written character. Like, I'll agree he didn't bring a whole lot of depth to it through his acting, but there was nothing there. Like, it was never clear why he quit his job in Boston to go live in some crappy house in Florida. Like, that never made any sense. Like, if he wanted to get away from his mother and he was teaching at Boston College, like,
there are other colleges.
There's like, he could have gone been an adjunct somewhere, or frankly, like, he could have taught community college. You know what I mean? I'm like, I get it. PhDs in philosophy are
no joke.
Are not. Yeah, but they're not super marketable on the you know, elsewhere in the world. But at the same time, if he was good enough to have an assistant professor job, then I don't know. That just was like, why did he do? It just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, the only time that's even, like, they try to kind of address that in dialogue when the lawyer is grilling him, when his mother's lawyer is grilling him, but I don't know if it was very convincing. You know who was really good? Lindsay Duncan. Lindsay Duncan blew my brains out when she gives her, like, diatribe on the stand. I nearly, like, I was like, girl, I disagree with everything you just said, but dang it, I will follow you to the ends of the earth. You're such a badass.
Yeah, she sold it.
Yeah.
I thought the scene at near the end where he, so the sister's been working her entire life to solve one of these famous mathematical riddles, and, or like unprovable proofs, which obviously they're provable, it's just no one's been able to do it yet. And then she solves it, and he tells the mother the solution would be published post-mortem. And then the mom's like, but, and the whole audience is like, but, and I just thought, like, that whole scene where she realizes that her daughter was like, no, after your death, Mom, for being the stage mom of mathematics and, like, forcing me into this life. I thought Lindsay Duncan just nailed every emotional beat in that scene.
Oh, absolutely. And then when she's trying to make that call afterwards and can't quite do it, and then pulls it together and makes the call. Oh, yeah, that ripped my heart out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, barely holding it together myself through that scene. And so, yeah, I thought she did a really good job there. I was unimpressed with most of the technical aspects of the movie. I mean, I thought that sunset scene was absolutely gorgeous, but nothing else really stood out to me. How about you?
I was looking out for it, and Mark Webb, I think we all know him as the director of 500 Days of Summer, and maybe one ill-fated Spider-Man movie, but mostly the 500 Days of Summer. Yeah. And I think anyone who's seen 500 Days of Summer remembers that it's very highly stylized, right? And and so I was expecting something like that, and it's very understated, the style of this film. He doesn't really kind of shove any like techniques down your throat. It's very like that. The backlit sunset was probably the only thing that stood out to me, like technically. And other than that, he's very economical with his choices in this film. But it was fine.
I loved this.
It was decent.
Yeah, I loved the soundtrack though.
Tell me about that.
Every song in this movie was so beautiful. Like, I loved the soundtrack. And again, I'm going to come back to this later, but you just can't go wrong with The Wind by Cat Stevens. But I'm looking now. Like, I just loved the soundtrack. I thought it was so great. So, like, half the time I wasn't really watching the movie. I was just listening to it, which is not a good review of this movie.
Yeah, probably not. Like, I think it sounds like you and I feel differently about it, but neither of us feels great. Like, you actually quite disliked it. I felt completely underwhelmed. Like, I didn't dislike it. I thought it was fine. But neither of us is like, this movie was excellent. Check it out.
Yeah, I mean, there are better things to see than this in the theaters. Like, just don't save your money. I think part of what really frustrated me moving into the thematic elements is that, did you see Whiplash, Damien Chazelle's first film?
I did not, but I'm familiar.
Drummer? Okay, so the plot line is basically this kid is like a genius jazz drummer, and he gets into the best jazz band at this fancy music college, and then the leader of this group is brilliant and exacting and abusive. Okay. And it's very much an exploration of like what price genius, you know, if you know you have a gift, like how much do you devote to it? Like at what cost? What do you need to be motivated? What comes just from within? It's so, and that movie had some real flaws in it, but I went with a couple friends. We drove home from the theater and we sat in the car outside my apartment building and kept talking about all the different themes in the movie, like just, you know, long after, because there was so much to say. And this movie had zero of that complexity. Like the mom was just a bad guy. Like, do you know what I mean? She was very, even with her big speech, it was incredibly unnuanced. Like, I mean, obviously the thing that she should have done, like the easiest possible compromise was he just agrees to send her to the gifted school, right? Right. There would be no plot to this movie. Like, right.
Which is why he ultimately decided, that's like his huge compromise at the end. But that's what it takes, is all of that drama to at the end be like, fine, I guess you can go to the school that's like actually a good fit for you. Fine.
Right. Yeah, which is ridiculous. Like, anyway, so I just thought, wow, you really wanted to say something and you ended up saying literally nothing and like less than nothing, in the sense that this whole convoluted plot was crazy town, you know?
Sure. Okay, so my comment earlier that I was going to refer to later is my only defense for that, you know, terrible plot device of sending her to the foster family is that the one theme that I did see touched on, sometimes more heavily than others, was about, like, the movie was about class segregation. So, like, the main conflict is, like, which social stratum is that correct? How's my Greek? Social stratum is this girl going to come up in? Which kind of American is she going to be? Or I guess not even American, Westerner. Which kind of class is she going to belong to, right? And they kind of set us up for that a little bit. And I didn't see any of this coming, P.S. I figured the movie might be saying something more along the lines of what you were exploring. And you're right, I didn't see anything there. But what I did see, and they set us up for it when Frank, towards the beginning, says, if you raise our leaders separated from all the regular folks, you get congressmen. Which is actually coming, it was a good line, right? But coming from Chris Evans, whose uncle is a congressman, I was like,
really?
Someone's not getting a Christmas card this year. But anyway, so I think it's key that, like, while it's not well supported that he left Boston, and for all the reasons we just mentioned, that is why I think he leaves upper crust Boston academia for, like, the land of palmetto bugs, to live in, like, a house that looks like
northeastern liberal.
Right, to live in a house that looks like it was just delivered off the back of a truck. You know? Yeah,
no, literally Ivy Tower. I get you.
Yeah.
Wow, I did not.
And then here comes, grandma comes with, like, her suit and her, like, her pale skin, and she's chiding him for letting him, like, sit in the sun and brown his skin like some kind of, heathen. And and I think that's why, I guess at the end of the second act or whatever, they try to split the difference and send her to live in this, like, mainstream, middle class, vanilla as hell foster family, which leads to the grandmother's my other favorite line.
House, though.
The what?
Yeah, with the giant house.
With the giant, it's like a McMansion, right? It's like, it's very, it's not even like sort of authentic middle class. It's like, cookie cutter American dream, like, 2 cars in the garage, charged out your credit cards every month, live in a McMansion. And the grandmother says my other favorite line in the movie, which is, God, they're probably going to take her to Olive Garden and teach her to say irregardless. So it's like this, it's not even anywhere. It's not upper class. It's not lower class. It's just like this gray vanilla nothing that they've left her in as this compromise between the classes. And of course it goes completely wrong for reasons that don't make sense. But ultimately, that seemed to be like why they did that ridiculous plot device, why they, had this, conflict throughout the movie that made no sense. It was all to make this point. But what's the point? I'm not sure what the point is. It was more of a question.
Yeah. I mean, I totally see what you mean. I think you're right. That was definitely a part. And then, like, having her be a normal little girl, all of those things were in there to zero resolution.
Right.
Like, basically what happens is that she just goes to the gifted school. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was the point? Like, nothing really got resolved, or really, because it was such an unrealistic storyline, you couldn't sort of adequately explore that theme to me.
Right.
Although, I mean, I do think that element is something, I guess, okay, so here's the way I took it. Because this is something that's really important to me. So I went to a big, diverse high school. We lived in an area that had good schools, but not the best in the country. And so some quote unquote failures in education, I don't think there were any, were made in favor of being in this diverse high school. And I think, to me, that's like what they were trying to say, is that, if you raise people in a bubble, then they would just be completely out of touch. And he was coming down on the side of, like, I'd rather her be a real person and a human being and kind and good and not solve one of these mathematical puzzles. And then the mother's like, but if she has that mind, again, doesn't she owe the world solving that mathematical puzzle?
That's a great point.
And then, and then the movie sort of says, no, she can have both. And you're like, oh, that didn't really, like, thanks, movie.
I mean, there's something to be said for the middle path, right? And it's almost better that she chooses both instead of neither, which is what that foster, family, middle class existence seems to be. So it's more like, yes, I'm going to, but it's a little, I don't know, is it condescending or not to be like, I'm going to spend my time dallying with the little people and then go off to my highfalutin, calling of academic pursuits. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I think you're right.
I mean, the thing that I always say to people is it's very hard to stay in that bubble as an adult.
In the ivory tower bubble?
Yeah, because even in your ivory tower, guess what? They're going to be staff people and admin secretaries and janitors and do you know what I mean? Like, there are going to be other people that you are going to have to function with. The world of work does not, it's hard to find a workplace where all classes aren't represented.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, I've always felt that part of the college curriculum should be having to work in customer service, you know, for a fixed number of hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
Because that determines, how you treat people that you are receiving services from for the rest of your life. You'll remember how you have felt being spoken to a certain way, but it's not even that, right? It's you know, being able to stay in touch with everybody, all different types of people from different backgrounds, right? And I guess that's what's important to Frank, is that she never becomes divorced from regular people. But then I guess he also feels like being in the world that his mother is in actually destroys people and doesn't want that to happen to her either. Yeah,
that it's going to damage her psychically. I'm hard pressed to make that case. I think it makes you a jerk. I don't know if it necessarily makes you suicidal. Yeah. So again, really good themes and something that I was really interested in and that speaks to me, you know, like the things that I'm interested in, but I just think the movie really just doesn't know how to answer that question, and so then basically doesn't answer it.
Sure. It does a lot of judging. Like, it does a lot of judging of the mother, you know, for saying that, you know, cutting off the quote unquote dalliance with the boy who cut our lawn when the daughter who, you know, the late, you know, mother of this child was, I guess, cavorting with the servants, and she, the mother kind of like puts the kibosh on that. I believe the technical
term is, the help.
The help, thank you. The help, cavorting with the help. And so they are for sure, the movie itself, I guess, the entity of the movie comes down squarely against that. And even God, the neighbor, played by Octavia Spencer, who obviously is black, you know, says that shocking line about, you know, to Frank about you couldn't even find a white lawyer. So like even in the prefab home park, there's this like systemic kind of like elitism, but you know, what's the word when you're hegemonized, like this, like, you know, internally, directed self-hatred, like. And there was nothing that wasn't ever followed up on.
No, but I do think, again, opened a door and then failed to satisfactorily close it. I do think the character of Octavia Spencer definitely, you know, she's agonizing over sending the little girl to school in the beginning because she's like, you don't want the world to know about this girl. And, it didn't make sense to me when I was watching it. It's been through this discussion where I realized, like, she's sort of representing that Black Lives Matter voice where she's like, no, you don't get it. You don't mess with the system because the system will eat you up. Like, she has this fear that he keeps dismissing as irrational. And she's like, no, I know how they come and take away your kids on the flimsiest of excuses. Like, you don't know what you're like. This has happened in our community so many times, which is not what she says in the movie, which maybe she should have to clue stupid people like me in. But I think actually now that we're talking about it, that's really what she represented in the movie, of like her fears for how Mary is going to be treated really are rooted in her, you know, making that character a Black woman as someone who understands all the ways the system is out to get you, not to help you.
Yeah, I really like that reading of it. That had not occurred to me.
Yeah. And then, I don't know. I mean, I guess I want to say, since they didn't satisfactorily end it, like, what did you think was best for Mary? What did you want to happen?
Me personally?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I want, well, you know, I don't really have an original answer. I wanted her to go to the school that was, you know, more specialized for her, but not to be sent away to MIT, you know, with her grandmother who was going to have her doing like differential equations on a laptop all day. I thought, you know, like just saying, yeah, that school sounds like a great option. Oh, she has a scholarship? That's nice of you. You know how often, like, I can speak from experience. You know how often white girls get scholarships to things just because they're smart? Not often. So take it. Go ahead and take that. Go to the fancy school. Get this girl, like, the stimulation she needs. And she'll make friends. Don't they have Girl Scouts at the gifted school? Like, I noticed her in her brownie vest at the end of the movie to signify.
I also noticed it didn't have. Yeah, she didn't have any patches either. Like, oh,
she must have just
she's
started
in brownies and she stinks at it.
Yeah. Oh man, she needs to do more community service, or sell more cookies, I guess. But yeah, no, I didn't really have any revolutionary kind of like suggestions for these imaginary people. What did you think? What did you want to happen?
I mean, I guess that was a good compromise. Like, I guess a lot of people who homeschool their kids do, like, put them in a bunch of sports or other activities while they'll be around kids their own age so they get the socialization.
Sure.
I actually came down on the side of keeping her in regular school as long as possible. I agreed with Frank because, and again, this sort of harkens back to what I was saying about Whiplash, was that she was doing math problems on her own at home anyway. Like, she doesn't need that from school. She was going to be, it's not like being an elite athlete where if you don't get the practice in and you don't, you know, your whole career is over, you know, by 18 or whatever. Like, if you don't devote your entire childhood into being in the Olympics, then you're done for, right? Like, that doesn't,
Sure.
Her brain is her brain. So she has to spend an extra couple years of catch up, like at the end, like, when she's 24, you know, like, what difference does that really make? You know, like, I don't think there's a case to be made that she had to get as much acceleration in as possible as a kid. Like, her brain is going to develop and mature over time anyway, even if she's a genius. Also, child prodigies flame out. So she could easily have, you know, sacrificed her whole life and then gone through the utter devastating thing of having given up her whole childhood to be a math genius and then finding out that she peaked early, gets to graduate school, and everybody else is better than her. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's like there was nothing to stop her from, okay, maybe she wouldn't take regular math classes because that's silly. Like, they would give her an independent study. But to me, there was no argument to be made that she actually has to be in this gifted school or her brain's going to rot and she won't ever develop her talent. I don't think that's true.
I think that's fair. I think that's definitely fair. I would want her to go to the gifted school more for just her daily sort of sensory experience, like to spare her those few hours where she's just like in pain from boredom. Like it would be more on that note for me. Like I just wouldn't want her to have to like suffer that every day. Now that would only be maybe for the math part. It could be that like, it sounded like from the movie, it sounded like all of her gifts were mathematically centered. So like it could be that it's just in the math section that she needs that extra stimulation. But she does need to learn how to like, you know, write cursive. I don't know. They didn't really go into that. And memorize historical facts. So like that could be there, but there would need to be something for those times when she's just like, you know, she says in the movie, 3 + 3, really? Like I'm going to kill myself. And when the teacher gives her like a harder assignment, she basically falls in love with that teacher, like right there in that moment. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, if it's so painfully obvious that all classes are horrible and boring for her, I wouldn't doggedly stick to this philosophy. But I just think, you know, the sense that, you know, you have to do really well in school at a certain age, you know, like you have to get all this stuff done by a certain time or it's all over. That's true for like a small subset of things. You know, there's a great Erma Bombeck column, which she writes, and she was 37 years old. So Erma Bombeck wrote her first column at 37 and then became Erma Bombeck, right? And she just has a litany of people who, wait. Whatever reason,
explain to us, to those of us who don't know, who's Erma Bombeck?
Oh, she's a very famous, like, satirist.
Okay.
Kind of like a Dave Barry. So this column goes through all of these people who are wildly famous and had important discoveries or developed talent later in life. And, you know, there are all these crippling statistics about, you know, all the great physicists came up with their ideas by the time they were 26. Okay, maybe so. But it's not impossible to come up with one at 37, you know? And it's just such a damaging thing to think you're on this really tight timeline. And I see no reason for it. And I think it does do psychological damage.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it causes gymnasts to have eating disorders.
And then the only other thing I'll say is, you know, one of the things they sort of allude to in little ways is, you know, like the sister gives him the mathematical proof, not her mother, right? Mm-hmm. And she gives him Mary and says, you know, basically he feels like it's his responsibility to raise her. And you know, that whole thing was like very personal for me, having lost a sibling. And I thought the movie actually portrayed how your family can completely fall apart after a death, that it will expose all the cracks that were there to begin with. So as a sibling, your understanding of what you do after the death is completely different, right? And you definitely feel, and we talked about this a lot in my support group, this sense that you have to carry on their legacy. You're sort of responsible for doing all the things they were going to do, plus all the things you want to do. And parents just, you know, again, it's usually hitting them later in life, like, and they never thought that they were going to accomplish the things their kids were going to do in the first place. Like, that's not something that a parent carries around with them. But so the whole idea of him stressing about, like, the most important thing I can do is take care of this little girl and do what my sister would have wanted. Like, he never expresses what he wants. He always couches it in terms of what his sister wanted. And I found that very moving and very truthful as a bereaved sibling.
Sure. I felt slightly resentful that the sister wouldn't have left any paperwork, any kind of like concrete record of what her wishes were. It was clear that she had been thinking about this a long time. Like, she had, you know, brought it up to him several times, you know, that she had tried before in the past. She had attempted to take her life in the past, and it just made me, I felt like, you know, why, you were planning to do this. You had this plan. Like, why not leave some kind of record so that your brother could move forward in the way that you wanted?
I think a lot of suicide really is just impulsive, though. Even for suicidal people, even for people who've been thinking about it a long time. The moment they actually do it, they always say, like, put mandatory waiting periods on gun laws prevents more suicides than anything else.
I've heard that. You know, the other thing I've heard works in Britain is they found that when they started making it illegal to sell pills in the bottles, when they started putting them in the little blister packs, suicides fell by like 40%.
Oh, really?
Because people would just get fed up from like pushing them one by one out of the blister pack, going, forget it. Things aren't so bad.
Fascinating. Oh,
right?
My goodness.
Right?
That
a little
is really
suicide joke for everybody there. Sorry.
Yeah.
I find that really interesting myself.
No, I'm going to, like, I'm to guarantee you, like, 2 days from now, I'm going to say, did you know in Britain?
Right. Right. They should do that here.
Okay. So, social impact score. So the social impact score, one is this movie was not socially relevant and also wasn't a very good movie. 10 being life as we know it and movies are changed forever. Yeah. What would you give it?
Yeah, I would say 2 just because it just wasn't that important. Like, it's not going to change anyone's life. I don't feel like there's a huge 6-year-old genius demographic that is desperately needing their story to be told. So, 2.
It's funny. I like this movie so much less than you did, but I almost want to give it a 3. Just because, hey, bereaved siblings, we don't get to see ourselves and our issues dealt with very often on film.
Oh, so. Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Tell us something we should see then.
I would love to. I did just recently watch a film. It is also about a custody situation following the death of a mother figure, and that is where the similarities end. It's called The Hunt for the Wilderpeople. It's a comedy out of New Zealand starring Sam Neill and this great, great child actor, Julian Dennison. Just watch it. I'm not going to say anything else. Just watch it. Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
Okay, and I am going to make the incredibly bold and true declaration that if you did not know it, dear listeners, Cat Stevens actually is the best folk singer to come out of the 60s wave of folk. If you don't have Teaser and the Firecat, the album that The Wind is on from this movie, you need to go get it. You should probably also get Tea for the Tillerman, which has Wild World on it, one of his most covered songs. Immerse yourself in the mellifluousness that is Cat Stevens. All right. I think that's it. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. We have been ticking up slowly and getting reviews. We really appreciate it, but we still want more.
Yes, it really helps listeners find the podcast, so it means a lot to us if you subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
Yes, and if you are on your way to work or sitting at home anxiously awaiting this podcast and you get it, today is the day of our happy hour. If you live in DC, come and see us at Penn Social. More information on our website, www.moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. Also see us on Facebook and Twitter.
Yes, at Movies Matter Pod and Facebook.com/Movies Matter Pod.
And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We will see you next time. Or tonight. Yay!
Or tonight. Or in 45 minutes. Thanks. Bye.